Hey there, Greg Smith here, and thank you very much for joining me on this free training of how to rid your game of inconsistency. Inconsistency is the number one frustration that I'll hear from amateur golfers, whether it be inconsistency with their ball flight, whether it be inconsistency with their scores, the shots they're hitting, or just, general all-round inconsistency. And if that describes your golf game, then this training is exactly for you. I'm going to show you how to completely rid your game of inconsistency so you can hit the ball more repeatably, have more control over your ball flight, and hit it longer and straighter than ever before. Also, I want you to make sure that you stick around to the end of the video because I've got a really important announcement and a couple of fantastic free gifts for you. So make sure that you watch this video through to the end. So let's get started ridding your game of inconsistency. Okay, so the first area that causes inconsistency with your ball flight is inconsistency with your arc of swing. So what I mean by when I talk about your arc of swing is the club's delivery coming into impact. As TrackMan would measure it, we'd be looking at round about sort of knee height through to knee height, what we might call the hitting area. An inconsistency of this arc is going to cause inconsistency of your ball flight. And when I talk about arc, that's how I want you to imagine your club coming into the ball. As golfers, we like to tend to think of things as quite linear. So we might use terms such as club path or face angle to discuss how the club's coming into the ball. But the reality is that the club works on an arc. The club approaches the ball from the inside, it squares up, and then it works on the inside on the way through. Great way to imagine this is the idea of a hula hoop. So this is how your club's going to come into the golf ball. And what we see with the amateur golfer who struggles with inconsistency, this arc is going to be inconsistent. It might be pointing too far to the right, or it might be too far to the left. It might be too steep or too shallow, or the worst combination is a little bit of everything. Because when the arc is moving about like this, then you have to use the reactive part of the brain to try and adjust the club face or the club path to try and square things up. The contrast to that, when we look at a top tour pro, is they're going to be very consistent with this arc. It's going to be doing the same thing over and over again. It's going to be very consistent coming into impact, a consistent plane, a consistent line. There'll be a little bit of variation with this, but not a huge amount. And what that does is it allows them to deliver the club consistently square into impact. It allows them to get repeatability of the flight. Okay, well, how do you do that? Well, we certainly want to get this club approaching in to square to back in. And what we tend to see with the best players in the world is the steep to shallow swing plane. So they're going to take the club back relatively vertical going back, and as they come down, they then shallow the club. And this allows the club to work from the inside to then square up at impact and work on the inside and the way through. It creates lag in the swing. It creates a pulling motion, which is going to give you more consistency of that club coming into impact, which means more consistency with the club path and more consistency with that face angle. And when you can create that steep to shallow shaped swing and get control over your arc of swing, your ball flight is going to be more repeatable. You're going to have more consistent start lines and more consistent curvature. So that's the number one fault, inconsistency with the arc of swing. You can get more consistency with that arc of swing, then you're going to have a lot more consistency with the ball flight. Okay, that brings us on to the second biggest fault for inconsistency, which then comes to inefficiency of body motion. So again, when we look at the amateur golfer who's inconsistent with their strike, what we're going to see is a lot of excess body motion, a lot of sway, a lot of lateral motion working in the golf swing. And again, going back to that idea of the arc of swing, if we're swaying all the way over here, we're moving this arc of swing, which means we're moving the low point of your arc of swing. You're going to move it all the way over here. So again, you've got to move it all the way over here to correct that to get the optimal strike. And of course, you can do that. You can get away with it for so long, but sooner or later, it's going to break down. What we tend to see with the best players in the world is they're going to have very efficient body motion. So as they work in the backswing, there's going to be very limited sway, very limited pelvic sway, very limited torso sway. We might find that some of the longer hitters have a little bit of sway in the first move, but certainly by the time they get to the top of the backswing, they're going to be very centered. And that allows them, it's a simple motion, it allows them to get the low point of their swing in a more consistent position. As they work their way down, it's a little bit different. So it's very centered going back. And then in the downswing, the torso will stay pretty centered, but the pelvis will move somewhere between 3 to 5 inches forwards into the lead leg. That allows them to push the low point forward. So with the irons, they can get more of a downwards hit, more penetrating flight. How do we know this? Well, obviously we've got state-of-the-art software now that tracks it, and the average that we're seeing overall is the sway in the backswing is going to be less than an inch, and then the pelvic sway in that downswing again is going to be somewhere between 3 to 5 inches with a pretty steady torso. If you can get your body moving this way, you're not only going to get consistency of strike, it's also going to help with that arc of swing from a directional point of view that we spoke about earlier, but it's also going to help you to generate more power. So if you can get control of this arc of swing, if you can get a repeatable swing through this steep to shallow motion, and if you can then learn to move the body efficiently with limited sway in the backswing, and then just that little bit of pelvic sway in the downswing, you're going to hit the ball much more consistently, you're going to hit it much further, and you're going to have more control over your ball flight. Okay, so I hope you found that useful. Now, there's one more part of this that allows you to master these two errors, and I'm going to talk about these in a separate training video that I'll release in the next day or so. So if you're not on my mailing list, click the link below and enter your name and email address, and I'll send you a notification when it's live. And I'll also send you a free gift to help you master what we've talked about today. I'm also going to let you know how you can download a free version of our state-of-the-art 3D analysis software so that you can track some of these things that we've talked about today. So again, thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next training.